everyone. Welcome to another edition of Real Talk, Real Stories. My name is Advita Patel, and I am one of the co-founders of the Asian Communications Network. And I'm here today with the wonderful Shalini Gupta, who is not only a very good friend of mine, but she's also one of the advisors for our Asian Comms Network. Welcome, Shalini. How are you?
Hi, Advita, and hi, everyone who's watching live. I'm good, really excited. My first LinkedIn Live, and with you, what else can be better than this?
I know, I love it. Like, we are chats all the time, so this is just like natural for us. If you've got any questions for Shalini or any thoughts, then please pop them in the comments. And please do also say hello. We'd love to see who's watching and who is watching us have a chit chat today. So Shalini, for those folks who don't know who you are, do you want to say a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Shalini Gupta. I am the head of internal comms for Arup for their UK, India, Middle East, and Africa region. And I've been in the UK for 20 years, have worked in the Middle East and also in India.
Amazing. So I know a lot about your history and your background and things like that. So I want to ask a couple of questions around what drew you to communications in the first place? Like, what was that kind of pull for you when you were first in India and you kind of saw it and saw the subject, or may have been introduced to the subject? What was that kind of draw for you initially?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it might sound very cliched, but it is. It's how I've been drawn to the power of storytelling. So growing up in India, I was an absolute voracious reader, and I always loved writing, right, from my early school days to sort of, my late university days. And so I think, words have always really inspired and fascinated me in the way how they connect people and how they really beautifully paint a picture of a world which is actually beyond your own. So I think it's the romanticism of words and everything around words and the influence that they can have on people sort of beyond, your remit is what interested me, to begin with. And I think the natural sort of that curiosity led me into sort of exploring different options that didn't straight away head into internal comms. It started from, being on the radio and TV as a host, whether I was dabbling in public relations. And in those days, we would go to, the various offices, getting a space in this newspaper or that newspaper and that publication, that kind of, old school PR. Yeah. Or whether it was kind of a more integrated marketing comms role when I came into the Middle East, or then kind of, into the UK, when I came to the UK, it was pure internal comms, and it has been since for 20 years. And I think that's what's been amazing, is really being able to use the power of those words to translate a clear picture. And that's where my passion lies, is really being able to kind of show people that line of sight to the purpose, the bigger purpose, why they wake up and come to work every day, and the strategy of their organization, where they see the impact of their immediate work into the communities and societies and the clients and the work that they do, and how they contribute to the bigger goals, and that's what excites me.
Amazing. Well, storytelling, you've lived in different countries, but storytelling is the connector, right? And yes. Even the interviews we've hosted with the other wonderful advisors and members, storytelling is definitely the one thing that's connecting everyone together. The ability to tell these incredible stories to bring people together. It's a reason that children, when you're younger and children ask for a story at bedtime, or when you're kind of talking with your friends at restaurants and you're telling them the story of your day. That's the kind of stuff that brings people together. And I think that's a love that communication professionals around the globe, I think, have that commonality between all of us, that we do all love a good story, and we do all like to bring people together, don't we? So I completely resonate with that. And I'm sure the folks who are watching us live also understand and recognize that pull from the storytelling perspective. When you think back of your kind of early moments of your career, because like you said, I loved it when you told me that you started your career in TV and radio. So you're a radio DJ and a host on television and stuff. But what was your kind of defining moment in those early careers that kind of really made you think, this is definitely the career path I want to go down?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I would say it was my, not even early mentors, I would say my sponsors. And this happened, when I was, in the Middle East, and, who really gave me the wings to fly. And I think I was given opportunities with senior leaders, my CEO and HRD, who I worked with at that point of time, that felt quite daunting as a newcomer in the industry, because I was, mid 20s when I landed in Dubai. And they really encouraged me to stretch beyond what I thought I was ready for, and really challenged me and, help me back myself. And what I've learned in life is mentors can offer you guidance, but I think it is those sponsors that actively, advocated for me and opened doors, or even showed me doors that didn't exist and pushed me into the opportunities that really helped me. And my views on sponsorship, because it's especially critical for women, and especially women of color, because sometimes visibility and advancement depend on somebody really publicly backing you and creating a space for your talent to be seen. And I think it's really important to make your aspirations known. And I had made them known, and I had sort of, those people, who with senior influence, who could open the doors, and who had visibility into my work. And I think the question to ask ourselves is, who in my network sees, or at my work sees my best work, has the influence, or, who would benefit from my success, because those are the best candidates then for your sponsors. But I was lucky, I was naturally kind of, I had those people at that point of time. And I got into the international secondment sort of with 2-3 years of experience under my belt. I applied at the HQ in London, and at that point of time, along with a global talent pool, and I was selected for that opportunity, which was incredible, because not only did it boosted my confidence, but I think it was my self-belief and courage, and that showed me also, I think, over the years, as I became a line manager and now the head of value in investing in others, and creating spaces for people where people really feel empowered. I think, you make mistakes and you grow. And you know what, I carry that every day in how I lead myself, lead my team, and, nurture the talent around me.
Yeah, and that is so important, what you just shared about, first of all, the sponsor versus the mentor. We are over mentored, not only as women, but as people of color generally. We get a lot of offers for mentorship, which is great, and it's something that we should be valuing 100%. I wouldn't be where I am today without my mentors. But sponsorship is definitely something that we don't often recognize or understand why it's so important. And we are under-sponsored. We don't have as many advocates or allies in that space who are talking about us in rooms where we don't often have a voice. So the fact that you recognize this quite early on in your career has made, I would say, probably the biggest difference in how you ended up getting the international secondment, and then moving to Dubai, UAE, and then into London. And having that, you mentioned something which I want to kind of just do a little bit of a deeper dive in, if that's okay, is that confidence and self-belief. Obviously, it's a topic that's very close to my heart, and we've spoken about this a lot. But in your early 20s, and I've spoken to a lot of people that are starting out in their career, and even mid-career, where do you get that kind of self-belief from? You started that career fairly new. You said, 2 and 3 years, you were then recommended to an international role. But where did you, what helped you kind of get that self-belief and push you to kind of put yourself out there a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I have very supportive parents, so that I think, that really helps, being the eldest, they really pushed me into sort of, doing what I believed in doing myself, and being Indian parents, not moving into, you have to be an engineer or a doctor. And I come from a family of, engineers and surgeons, very, very successful. So I think, that really helps, I think, when you're not pushed into doing something you don't believe in, but then, what you're good at. And I think I've always been inspired. So that's, my inspiration, I think, to begin with. And I think I've always been really inspired by people who've really dared to step into uncharted territory and really back themselves. And, people who weren't afraid to be bold and curious. And I think, seeing and watching closely such leaders navigate challenges with confidence and integrity kind of, has has kind of really piqued my interest, always piqued my interest. I was always reading autobiographies and biographies, and my dad was the one, he used to take us to book fairs annually in Delhi. And, he was a voracious reader as well. And, I'd pick up loads and loads of books. The bulk of them in my late teens would be autobiographies and biographies of leaders around the world. And our car boot would be full of, loads of books, and we would bring them back home. So, that's the kind of inspiration my dad would read, and I would kind of read often similar books of, often such leaders. So I think the combination of that kind of, courage, curiosity, just being bold and kind of moving into uncharted territory was all kind of, developing under my skin. I think, I was just waiting to explore that, gradually as to, when it would come to my own journey, how I'd kind of, what would that translate into it for me. But more kind of, lately, as I've become a leader and, kind of leading teams in my career, I've been quite inspired by sort of Chanel CEO, Lena Nair, who was also ex-Unilever HRD, and ex-PepsiCo CEO, Indra Nui, massive influences for me, the both of them. And, they've inspired hundreds and thousands of people across the globe. They have been sort of, the women who've moved from India to the big corporate world in the West, and really kind of, made a mark for themselves, leading a brand like Chanel or whether it was PepsiCo. And the journey is absolutely incredible. So I think, that's been my sort of inspiration. And of course, very supportive husband who's always kind of we're challenging each other to sort of, grow.
I think that's so important what you said, having that community, having the people around you who are helping you thrive. And not holding you back, right? And that's, I talk a lot about the confidence side of confidence in general, and self-esteem and self-belief. And one of the key areas of that is making sure that you're surrounded by people who are giving you positive energy and allowing you to find your path and supporting you even when you fail, as well as when you succeed, right? I think it has to be hand in hand. And it's so important what you said around shadowing, observing, asking, because I always say to folks, like, if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And the worst answer they can give you is a no. The best answer they can give you is a yes, right? There's no, like, it's absolutely okay. And then some people will say, no, I can't sponsor you, or I don't want to work with you, whatever. And that's okay. I think it's putting yourself in that space in the first place to ask those questions. Because, if you weren't as curious or as inquisitive as you were, and you weren't aware of how leadership is and what that looks like, then you probably wouldn't have put yourself in that kind of spotlight in the early career to be able to give the opportunities that you were given.
No, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, our confidence hasn't been sort of, inbuilt or, in the DNA in that sense. It has been hard. So I don't want to paint a picture and say, do you know what, I've always been 10 on 10. It has been hard. Sort of moving countries, industries, and trying to kind of, navigate the whole journey over the last 20 years, which I'm sure, I'm happy to talk more about that. But there have been moments. Yeah.
I was going to say, that's what I want you to talk about now, because we've spoken quite openly about some of the challenges you faced, and some of the adversity that you've come across in your career, right? And we've known each other now for nearly 6 years. And it is interesting, some of the stories that you've shared and how you, and people do make I said to you before we came live, right? So people look at you as this really confident, competent communications professional who's won incredible awards, been shortlisted recently for some fantastic awards as well. Head of IC for a global organization, and people on the outset will look at you going, oh, Shalini is absolutely smashing it out of the park, which you are, by the way. There's no denying that. But people don't often see the journey it took you to get to where you are, and some of the challenges you've had to face to get to where you are. And you've had challenging times, right? Especially trying to navigate the cultural elements of the world that you're in and the comms world that you're in. And you did an incredible speech at the 40 Over 40 Awards, which you were recently given. And I'd love you to kind of talk a little bit more about the, some of the adversity and the challenges and how you overcame them. And your speech kind of covered some of that, but it'd be great for our folks to know a bit more about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, sort of moving countries and, kind of having a young family soon after moving countries has, in a country where I had sort of no networks has not been easy. It was definitely challenging. There were moments where I definitely had to kind of, check my own confidence. I went through, I think, almost more than 100 interviews in 20 years. And when I would hear things like culture fit, it would often mean we're not quite ready for somebody who looks like you, or not being a native English speaker in the comms industry in the UK.
Yeah.
Whatever native English speaker means and how that defines what good English language skills are is beyond me, to be honest. So I started code switching, which a lot of people will understand. Sort of, you want to fit in, and you kind of sort of, developing habits or behaviors that are not naturally kind of, yourself. But I think over time, I learned that the real impact comes from really recognizing that you are capable, you're brilliant, with authenticity, and what you sort of bring to the table. Then I think there were some huge defining moments for me when the financial crisis happened, 2008, sort of starting 2008 and onwards, when I was made redundant twice in the 10 years, in the decade that followed, and with very limited support or empathy from my line managers at that time, and a pattern that unfortunately followed me through parts of my career. I often felt like I was waiting for someone else to open the door. And then until sort of, a very senior mentor who I came across as part of a leadership program within the organization where I was working, she said to me that, your line manager is already thinking about their next role. So why aren't you? That hit me hard.
Yeah.
That hit me really hard. And it was a turning point in taking ownership of my own growth and career trajectory. And I took a leap to join A Leader Like Me, which was a mentoring program that, yourself and Priya were offering 5 years back. And I think that then kind of, helped me move over the trajectory even more, because I stopped asking, am I ready? And I started kind of saying, here's what I bring. Because some of those years felt like I was, running uphill with, a buggy in one hand and, a toddler in one, and kind of running uphill in flip-flops, as I said in my 40 over 40 speech. And it did feel like that, because, having a husband who's building his career as well, and then not having any family support, having no family, I had all of those things in the mix. But then, when I kind of, started turning it around, working with mentors and this leadership program, it was really sort of, moving to here's what I bring to the table. And I started kind of, mentoring moms returning to work, as mentoring young people into the world of comms, speaking at industry events, being featured on podcasts, working through the Taylor Bennett Foundation, kind of supporting underrepresented comms talent. And then last year, I was elected to the board of the IOIC in its most competitive years, chartered with CIPR, the fellowship that followed with IOIC, and then, of course, the Asian Comms Network sort of, board. And then becoming head of internal comms with Arup. And I've recently, grown that team, and 2 promotions in the time that I've been here. I'll complete 3 years this Friday, and I'm very proud of sort of, the journey, the growth, and the value that I bring in what I do in driving, impactful business outcomes through comms. And I have a brilliant team that I'm really, really proud of.
I mean, that, you are a walking advert for what happens when you stop waiting for permission and you stop waiting for validation. And you put yourself out there and go, do you know what? I've got this. So it's not, am I ready? It's saying I am ready, and I'm going to show that I'm ready. And that's the challenge in the South and East Asian culture, and the Black community as well. But, talking from our own lived experience, we are often waiting for people to give us permission to succeed or to proceed. And if we don't get that validation and we don't get that recognition, we often put it on ourselves and think we're not good enough, or we need to be better. I used to, similar to you, I'm a bit of a certificate chaser. I love doing a course and a certificate and, getting my accreditations and stuff. And it was only when Dr. Jackie, who's a values expert, said to me that I am actually hindering my own progression by waiting for other people to give me the green light. And it's about time I gave myself the green light. And that's the reason, you mentioned there about the Leader Like Me program that Priya and I set up in 2020. just during actually the horrific murder of George Floyd and all the kind of the reckoning that was happening around EDI around that time, because we saw that the people in our network, and it's specifically for women of color at that time, we saw the lack of support that was happening. And you were on our first cohort. You supported us from day one as much as we supported you. But the difference it makes when you know that somebody has your back, and that is, one of the reasons Fazana, Shalini, and I set up the Asian Comms Network, because we realized that the three of us are pretty lucky and privileged with where we are with our influence and the work that we've done. I mean, it's not been easy. Similar story to you, right? We've all three of us faced all sorts of challenges, but like you, we wanted to hold our hand out and help others along the way, because that's the only way we can grow and thrive in a space that's not often built for people like us. And that culture fit thing is really powerful, what you said. If anybody's got any questions for Shalini, please do pop them into the comments. But I'm just going to show this one right now before I go to the next one, which is from the lovely Nazia, who is also one of our members for the ACN. He says that the Voice magazine, which is the Institute of Internal Comms members magazine, has a great article on storytelling, which is great. So if you're a member, then do check that out. But she said an extra shout out to you, Shalini. Not only are you a board member, but you're very generous in giving your time and mentoring as well. So I know you're Nazia's mentor, which is fantastic. So thank you, Nazia, for sharing that.
Thank you for the shout out, Nazia.
It's brilliant. So we've spoken more, about some of your boldest kind of moves that you made and UAE, especially when you have a young family and a husband who's also growing his career. But when was it? You read all those autobiographies and you had an incredible, sense of leadership at a very young age. But who was your kind of inspiration at that time? You've spoken about Lena, obviously, from the Chanel and the PepsiCo CEO. A name just completely got out of my head. But who were your kind of key inspirations to kind of help you get motivated during that time?
It's really interesting. It's really hard to pin down kind of one or two sort of inspirations other than the names that I've mentioned already. I think I really trusted my instincts once I had sort of realized that the challenges are not going to go away. I really trusted my instincts, and it's just learning to kind of set my own terms without knowing that I'm not going to compromise on my values and just move ahead with what I am after. And I think manifestation has been quite key in that sense to me, and becoming really strategic, I think, and thinking about where you want to invest your energy. Even when you're sort of starting your career, learning from your mentors, about this, or, during, and as you kind of, lead is, learning where to invest your energy, when to push and when to ask for support, because I think that's quite important. It's when to ask for support. And I think that's kind of, what has changed over time and really helped sort of, keep me inspired. Having a network, I think, has been quite majorly important, because I think the network has been inspiring to me. When you sort of, see more people who look like you in the industry, that inspires you. Then I think I would say, a leader in another industry or a celebrity or somebody out there, because you become what you see is as clearly. That is the biggest inspiration, I think. Yeah. And it was quite hard because I didn't see anybody, in my early career who looked like me, at least in the comms industry. So that was hard. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, really made me, understand how important visibility is. Because I think, and even the leaders who were visible, some of the leaders who were, just a few of them, very handful, they were in very high code switch mode.
Yeah.
Not willing to, I think, not willing to come to spaces and really acknowledge in terms of who they were. So that was hard. And because I was looking to be inspired if I did spot somebody, you're here, my inspiration, you're here in this role, but they were very much in code switch mode. So I think, that also really helped me understand that, my inspiration has to come from myself. The real power has to come from within me rather than me waiting to feel inspired. I've read about countless leaders by now, but it is me, myself, end of the day, it's my journey that I need to kind of really push myself. And it's also kind of, really made me learn that, real power is also not about being the only one who made it. Yeah. And then getting into that code switch mode as to have a wall, I know, but it's about making sure we're never the last.
Yeah.
That is hugely, hugely important to me, because every step you take, every door you open, every barrier you break, it paves the way for those, who come after. Yeah. And every single time I have spoken on the stage, being part of a panel, or, if it's an award or any other achievement, my LinkedIn DMs and the volume of LinkedIn DMs I get, from people who say, gosh, you really inspire. You haven't seen somebody, who looks like you, but, we now believe. And that, if you can, then, so we can. So I'm really, really, I think, blessed. And, I think, it's amazing to be able to create that for others coming behind me in what I didn't see myself. So I think the power of authenticity. I don't believe in code switching anymore. This is who I am. I'm not putting up an English accent. I think I speak very good English, So, and, that's what I mean is, that's exactly what's important, just being your authentic self.
Yeah. 100%.
And people can see through that.
Yeah. And this is so interesting about what you said about a similar experience to you. When I remember when I first messaged a few people about the ACM, very senior, quite who I saw as very kind of inspirational individuals who I related with because of who they were and similar lived experience to me, who were very firmly against it, and shut the door very tightly and locked it and basically said, I made it without help and other people can do the same. But that's what they were kind of implying, which really took me by surprise. I don't know why it took me by surprise, because I do believe, and I don't blame them really for that attitude, to be honest with you, Shalini, because we've been taught in this country specifically about scarcity. There can only ever be one of you in that room, because we only ever see one of us in the room, right, around that table. And I get it, right? Depending on where you live and what you do and all that kind of stuff is very different. But we've been trained, because we never see more than one person that looks like us around a boardroom table. The scarcity mindset kind of fits into our world, and we just think, well, if I allow other people to come along with me, what does that mean for me? I get those opportunities again. And I've never been brought up in that way. I've always been I want to keep that door open, to your point, and not gatekeep. And that's where the Asian Comms Network, and you articulated it beautifully about why this community exists. We're here to help each other out. We're here to recommend each other for opportunities. We want to make sure that we're visible, and we give people the space to explore some of the challenges that they're facing. We're going through a tough time right now, especially in the UK and in the US, right, with diversity, equity, inclusion, in fact, globally, but generally, this world, seeing, things being said and people making out nowadays that we don't belong in that space. And as much as that's the minority, it still hurts. And it's still, it's still very real for many of us. So having a space where we can all connect, all collaborate, have really good conversations and feel safe, most importantly, is incredibly important for us. Just before we sign off, because it's been an absolutely fantastic conversation and I could talk to you all day, what's the one piece of advice you would share with somebody who is breaking into this career right now but feels a bit alone and a bit isolated? What would you say to them?
I would say never shrink yourself to fit in. Just be brave, be courageous, not just, in what you say, but also how you show up.
Yeah.
And ask for support. Don't wait for permission.
Love it.
Because that's what changed it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. Don't wait for somebody to give you that olive branch or the pathway, open that door. Keep knocking on it. It's hard, it's tough, it can be challenging, but surround yourself, as you said, with the right energy. Surround yourself with the right community. Remind yourself of your brilliance. I say this to a lot of people that I work with, like, remind yourself that you are very good at what you do. And that makes a big difference, right, to how we are seen in the world that we're in today. If people wanted to connect with you, what is the best way for them to connect?
LinkedIn is the best. So connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me, send me a DM. I'm more than happy to speak to you, connect with you.
Brilliant. And we'll make sure we share Shalini's LinkedIn details in the comments as well. But thank you so much, Shalini, for this amazing conversation. Like I said, I could talk to you every single day of every hour, and we often do sometimes.
Yes.
But it's brilliant to hear a little bit more about your story. Thank you for your contribution to the ACN Advisory Board. We love having you part of that space as well. And thank you for everybody for joining us and listening to Shalini's story. We will be back next week. Fazana, I think, is hosting next week because I will be in India. And we look forward to that conversation next week. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you're watching us back on replay, then please do feel free to pop a question in for Shalini if you've got anything, and we'll make sure that she gets the answer back to you as well. And we'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Bye.